Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to import a wine bottle, make a scene in Dimension, and then apply your own custom label to the wine bottle. Now, when you go into Dimension, here's a custom scene right here, and there are these assets that are created just for Dimension, and they're all set up really nicely. And you can actually search these assets right here. If you search for wine, there's nothing. If you search for bottle, you get these three options that, you know, they're not too bad. They're well made. If they're textured when they need to be. This one is already set up to have a label applied to it. When I do that, I just need to select the actual bottle model, and I can go right here and set the actions. In this icon right here, it says place graphic on model. So I can create a label in Photoshop, either JPEG or Photoshop or PNG, hit this button and then apply it to this bottle. But obviously we don't want this, we want a wine bottle. So I'm going to import a bottle that I made in a previous tutorial on creating wine bottles, which can be found right here in pixelpyro.teachable.com. If you're so inclined, there's an entire process of creating a wine bottle from scratch inside Cinema 4D, and the way to really do it, how to make it watertight, and a very nice looking 3D model. It's the whole process right here. And what I have instead right now is the finished bottle from that tutorial. So I've prepped this to be brought into Dimension, and I'll show you that process right now. Now I'll get rid of this, hit the trash button, there we go, clear that. Now I'm just going to go to File, Import 3D Model. And I've made my 3D model as an OBJ file, which is a standard file for 3D programs. I can just open that, bring it in, here we go. The label's been flipped for some reason, but we'll fix that in a second. What's cool is you can see how these already have glass materials applied to them from the OBJ file that I created from inside Cinema. But we're going to go back and use the Dimension materials right here, either the standard materials for glass or the substance materials for glass. We have several options to choose from in making this a good scene. One of the things that they have down here too in the assets is the images. And what's really cool is you can just drag and drop these into your scene. Oops, sorry, that was under the label. Like that to create backgrounds. I'd like to do this table scene right here. So if I just drag that onto the scene right there, it loads. And then you have this really cool action right here called match image. And what that does is it aligns and lights your scene using the information from that image. If I just click that, it creates lights, it resets the canvas, and we hit OK. So now, if you can see, the grid right here has actually been changed to match the perspective of the table. Now all I have to do is move the bottle around in the scene, and it'll match like it's sitting on the table. And you can see the shadows right here. So if I bring this down, you can see how it snaps to the ground plane, and now it's on the table, so to speak. I'm going to move this forward. I'm using the middle mouse button right now to change this perspective a little bit with the camera. I just kind of want it to be more heroic in the scene. Okay, great. There we go. Let's just go to this button right here, which is a render preview of the scene. Oh, that's funny. You can see it rendering. So we need to actually apply some materials to this, just so that it reads better. So if I go into this folder, this has all the 3D models that I had brought in from Cinema 4D. So I've actually got a wine glass and the wine liquid inside the glass, so we can put a wine type material in here, but have it sit inside the glass itself. So let's go up here to the Adobe Standard Materials, and I'm just going to click this glass material and drag it onto the wine glass. You see it loads. There we go. See, I've got the renders preview turned on, so it's going to start rendering as I drop these things in. I'll drop this into the wine glass too, and then I'll also drop it into the wine bottle. And there we go. Now we need to find a liquid that we can drop in to be the wine. There is a beer right here, which we can start with, and then change the color and the thickness. Let's do that. So we've got a beer material. We'll put it in the wine liquid models and also the bottle liquid models. Okay, you can see it rendering right now. Now if I select this, let's see, bottle liquid right here, I click this little arrow. I've got a pretty good render so far. I want to change this color of the beer material to be wine. And you can go right here into the properties and just change the base color. Let's make it more of a purplish red. Or something like this, and then we can have that set up. And then if I go into the translucent settings, what that does is if I change the density, it makes the liquid thicker, so light actually dissipates into it more quickly. And you can see how the interior color now changes once the density is turned up. Okay, that's a good wine color right now. Okay, so now I want to apply this wine material to the other two objects right here that have the beer material in them. Now what I can do, kind of just like in Photoshop, is I can use this eyedropper tool right here and actually sample another material onto the other material right here. But what I have to do, if I do that right now, if I select that, it actually just selects the glass material of the bottle. So we need to undo that, and I need to actually hide the wine bottle itself like that. So I just have the wine liquid material right here. Now, so when I go into the wine liquid in the glass right here, just by doing that, I have the beer material applied. So I select that. I have the eyedropper tool selected, and I'll just click that wine material. You can see how it gets added right here. So I'll do the same thing for the other glass, like that. Oh, whoops. Sorry, that's the wine glass. Wine liquid, like that. Eyedropper, bam. Now they're both selected, and I'll turn on the bottle glass material for this wine bottle. What I want to do for this wine bottle though too is go into the material for the glass like this and go into the translucence right here and make this more dense, and then change the interior color like this to a dark green like that, which is more of what a red wine bottle would do. I can also do this base color as well. I can make that more of a green, maybe like that. Now it's got a really nice dark green to it, which could be maybe a little too much. Let me just bring this down a little bit. That's great. And I'm going to do this roughness a little bit. This roughness means the roughness of the reflections on the glass. If I turn it all the way up, you can see how the reflection changes. I just don't think glass really does that. It doesn't reflect 100% like a mirror. It has a little bit of roughness to it. And I can change the opacity. That doesn't really do anything though, because it's really more about the translucence in the refraction and the density of this glass, not so much the opacity. I'm going to actually change this base color to be more, just a little bit lighter, so that the density changes the color with that interior dark green right there. Okay. There we go. Now the scene is pretty much set on this table. It's lit. You got the bottle right here. Let's apply this wine label. Okay, so here's the wine label that I created in Photoshop. I'm just going to save this, Shift S, as, I'm going to save this as a PNG. Bring that in, make sure there's transparency. So you're going to get this white band around the object because of the way that Dimension reads opacity or in transparency in PNGs or PSD files. So what you actually have to do, which is even better in Dimension, is you can actually just delete this label, or at least hide it from the scene, and you can select the wine bottle itself like that, hit that right arrow, and you select place graphic on model, and I'll just take that wine label that I just created as a PNG, hit open, and you can see how it actually just gets applied to that wine bottle like that. Now you have these two options right here, either decal or fill in the placement. If I hit fill, it actually tries to fill the entire bottle with that image. So if I select decal, I can actually just, as long as I have this button, this cursor selected, the move tool, I can actually just drag it across the bottle like that, and you can see how it actually bends with the bottle. That's perfect. So I can put it right there, and then I'll just do this, which you can also do in the scale settings right here so they can be more precise, and just scale it across the bottle like that, the way that you want to see it. And there we go. And you can see how if I drag it like that, it kind of gets rotated, but I can just type in 0 degrees right here to make sure it's straight. Maybe like that, actually. And there we go. There is the label applied to the wine bottle with transparency as well. So you can make the label as wide as you want to wrap around the entire bottle if you'd like, but this one just goes in the front right here. And also, you don't have to worry about it being only a square label. It can be whatever design you want because it just relies on the transparency of the file itself. So you have that. It's a PNG with transparency. It's on the bottle right here. Let's hit render and see what this whole thing looks like right now. It's pretty great so far. But I turned off these directional lights that were added automatically. I felt like they were kind of too sharp, but I wanted to show you what was possible by kind of messing with these settings. One more thing too, there's a wrapper up here. I never actually applied a material to here. This came from Cinema 4D, so it's got a little bit, it doesn't really have any shininess like I wanted. Now we can either drag and drop a material from here, but I also wanted to show you what we can do just with the settings in the properties right here. If I turn the roughness down, you can see how it gets shinier. Translucence we don't really need. You know, that's the whole thing about it. Like, there isn't a lot you can do. You can make it more metallic if you'd like. Turn the roughness up. There's not a lot you can do here, but there are really great materials already provided. I'm going to go into the substance materials actually and see what they have here for some kind of nice kind of foil wrapper. Smooth silk. Maybe not. There's this glossy right here, which we can apply. Glossy paper, that's good. And I'll just change the color to that dark red that we had before. And bring the roughness up a little bit. Roughness variation, that's nice. These are all different because of the substance material settings. That's great. Okay, so now with the lights, if I select this directional light and I turn it back on so you can see how it shows up in the reflection right here. So the cool thing about the way these lights are set up is they rotate around the origin of the scene, which is where the bottle is. So if I just slide this rotation right here, you can see how it just rotates around the scene. And you can see the shadows change as well. So I kind of want to put a bright light right here to highlight this label. So now that I have the rotation set there, I can turn the intensity up. And I can also turn the height, so I can kind of make it more towards the scene, like at the height of the table like that if I want. But you can see how the shadows get really long. If I bring the height up, you can see how it kind of, I like the shadows like that. And so now we have a good setup right here. Maybe rotate it to be more on the edge of the glass. I change the size. You can see how that works too, of the light itself. And then bring the edge softness up. You can see how the fall off on the brightness right here is really nice. And as it renders, you can see how it changes. Nice thing about Dimension as well is if you just hover over right here, it'll give an explanation of what that actually does, the edge softness. I think that's pretty nice. I'm going to turn the size down a little bit, but then bring the height down. Yeah, so it's more along the bottom. I kind of like that type of light. We can change the color too. Let me bring this intensity down. Change the color to be more warm, kind of yellowish light. Cool thing about this too is you can set the temperature to be, presets that you would normally use in studios. These are really nice. So if we want like a warm compact fluorescent, or let's see, studio incandescent. Nice and warm. It's a little bit too warm for me. We can just drag that. We can just drag this if we want as well to bring it a little bit, make it a little bit cooler, the color at least. So we have that. I also just, because I like the idea of matching this scene, I want to change this directional light right here, this third one. And it was actually right here, you can see on the camera left side of the scene. What I'm going to do though is actually rotate it to be behind, and you can see the shadows. I want it to match this background, kind of this bright light right here. So I'm rotating it around to be basically behind the bottle, and you can see the shadows change right here. And I'm just going to emulate that backdrop of this image, these windows right here. Bring the height up a little bit. Bring the size, make it really big. As you can see how it falls off on the back of the bottle. That's really nice. It's also blue. If I choose the temperature, this is daylight, which is great. Yeah, that's what we want because that's what it is. That's great. I like that background. I'm going to go back to this light and bring this softness up. I'm going to change the shape to a square. What I'm going to do is actually go to the render scene right here, and we'll go through the render settings that we can do to send this to Photoshop and then further tweak it. So if I select this render, you can see nothing's going to happen until I hit this render button. But what I can do is set up all these settings first before I do that. Now you can do a PNG if you'd like, and you can also do both if you'd like at the same time. But the PSD is really pretty amazing what they provide for you in the file. So I want to just do that right here. I'm just going to call this, version 1. Current view, that's great. Wine bottle, quality is medium. Medium's pretty great already. So I'll set the save to where I'd like it. Like that. Have the file name set up, and let's just hit render. You get the status right here. This will show up in a second. There we go. That's pretty awesome. I would go back and change the color of this. This green is too bright. It's too. It's not saturated enough, I think, and it's too light. So it needs to be a little bit darker, a little bit more saturated green. But I do like how the light. I think this. I kind of went nuts on the light right here. This is a little bit too crazy. This is a little bit too crazy. But I do love the backlight. Is really nice. So I would go and take down the intensity of this key light right here. You can see how it's kind of blowing out the label as well. But you can see how, this took about 2 minutes to render. I would say, just to be safe, give yourself about 20 minutes to let it render, but it's going to be a nice image when you're done. Now let's go into the Photoshop file itself. You can see right here, PSD file, wine bottle version 1, current view. That's really nice. If we open it up, you have all these different layers that were created just for this image. So the additional layers are pretty amazing. You've actually got material selection masks, so you can select by just selecting the solid color, you can select these objects to be isolated in whatever way you'd like. Same with this one. Oh, sorry, this is the material selection mask, but you can't see the wine inside the glass, but you can select the glass. Object selection masks, so you can select these objects by themselves. Now, depth information is really cool. That's actually it's a grayscale representation of the depth based on what the camera was seeing. So black is basically as far away as possible. What white means is that was the part of the scene that's in focus with the camera, and then everything around it, as you can see how this starts very white and then it falls off to gray. So this will be out of focus if you wanted to use a depth channel. But that was provided by default. In the render, you have the rendered image, which has noise, and then you have the reduced noise render. And as you just saw, you've also got the background image all by itself. So you can actually turn that off or change it if there's the same perspective, and you can have this rendered image on a background color, and you can obviously change this background color to be whatever you want, and the shadows in the bottle stay there. So you have the option later, without having to go back and re-render, to either have a solid color or an image underneath this render. And it's a really powerful way of just staying flexible without having to go back and re-render. So that's Dimension. There's a lot of stuff you can do in it. It does create very nice images. I hope this helps. Thank you. Bye.